Greetings my rain-drenched designers. This tutorial is going to show you how to add puddles to pretty much any material by hacking XPresso into a shading network. So grab an umbrella and step out into the rain. So I already have a few things set up here. It is a simple plane with a single asphalt texture on, which looks like this. And in the material, I just have that single texture going into both the color channel, first of all, and then it also goes into the bump. And then I have a little bit of reflectance just to make it look a bit wet. But I want to create actual puddles on this surface, and to do that, I'm going to use XPresso to create a sort of makeshift shader network. I'll start by turning off all the channels except for luminance, where I'll create a noise shader. And this noise shader will be used as a master mat to control where the puddles are. I'm going to use blistered turbulence because that worked well before. I'm going to turn up the octaves all the way to 20 and set the texture space to world. Then I'll have to scale this whole noise up quite a bit. So now we render it and it looks like this. And the idea is that the white parts are going to have puddles and the dark parts are going to be drier. So I'm going to add a colorizer effect to this. And then in that colorizer effect, I can sort of select a range of brightness on the noise that I want to use for my puddles. This is looking better. And then I can also use this to create a natural looking fall off around the puddles so that the closer you get to the puddle, the wetter the ground will be. So these grey parts that you see are going to be slightly wet, and then these white parts are going to be completely water filled. Right, so I hope you're ready for some XPresso because it's coming right up. Welcome to XPresso for people who are slightly uncomfortable at the thought of XPresso, Part 2, the Re-XPressoening. The purpose of this whole thing is to be able to control every puddle using just the one texture that I can then tweak and update as much as I want. So let me first create my XPresso tag. I'm going to add it to my cloner object, and then I will drag in my asphalt material into the XPresso window and find myself the luminance texture that we just created in there and create an output from that. And now I would like to lead this texture into loads of different other slots. Let me first turn down the brightness of the luminance, and then I'll turn back on the color channel, the reflectance, and the bump. So now when I render it, it looks exactly the same as it did at the start. So in reality, where there's a puddle, usually the diffuse/color channel is a bit darker. So I'll add the texture we have there right now into a fusion. And then in the blend channel, I want to create a color shader, and I'm going to make that one completely black. But I think total black is a bit too black, so I'm going to turn down the blend amount to somewhere around 70%. Then I'll also check Use Mask. And the mask I want to use is our procedural puddle noise that we have. And to use that one as our mask texture, I need to link these two up in XPresso. So I'm going to grab our fusion shader and drag it to my XPresso window. But now we also need to find the correct input, and we can look at the drop down here. We got basic properties, nothing about a mask in there. We have shader properties, and there's nothing about a mask in there either, so we can't get the input from there. But what we can do is drag the mask channel into the little blue input box, and that gives us that as an input. So now I can just link our procedural puddle mask into the mask channel, and it pops up and it's used as the mask. Let's check that it works with the render. And it does. The ground is now a bit darker wherever the puddle noise is brighter. However, my great experience tells me that puddles are wet. So we're going to need some reflection on that as well. So let me go into Reflectance channel and add a new layer, GGX Reflection, which I will call Wet. I'm going to leave all the settings at default, except I'm going to add a Fresnel. I want the Fresnel to be water, because water sounds like a good idea. Then I'll find myself the layer mask, and that's where I want to link the puddle noise to. So I'll make a copy of our asphalt node here in XPresso, remove the output, and drag our layer mask texture into the blue input box there. And that creates an input for us. So now we can link that one with our puddle noise. So now that puddle noise is used for both darkening the color channel and adding reflection on top. And it's looking a lot better now rendered. It looks pretty good in the distance, but when you come up close, you see that it's got some issues with the bump map. Because puddles usually aren't bumpy like that. They're usually flat. So let's go into the bump map and fix that. I'm going to do the same thing here that we did with our color texture and create a fusion. But instead of turning this blend channel black, I'm going to turn it perfectly gray, so the bump is not going to stick out or go in too much. And I'll jump back into our fusion shader and activate mask. And I will drag our fusion shader into the XPresso window. That creates a new node. I'll go into the fusion, find the mask, and drag that to the input. And then I can just link that with our puddle noise. So now that grey colour is going to come through on our bump map wherever our puddle noise is white, which we can see when we render it. It looks pretty good now, although it does look like it barely rained before. So I want to make these puddles bigger. And to do that, I just need to go into the luminance channel, into our colorizer that we had, and just tug on these slightly. So I'm going to tug down the black point and then increase the white fall off. So I'll render it again. And now you can see that the puddles are immediately bigger from just changing that one value, and it just updates through the network. So hypothetically, if you had a box which was full of kittens allergic to water, you wouldn't want those to stand in a puddle. So let's render this lovely box right now, and you can see actually that we're having an issue. The ground looks kind of yellowy and doesn't look like puddles at all. And that's something that just happens sometimes when you force XPresso to work as a shading network. I suspect it wasn't really built to do that. And this is quite quick and easy to fix. All you need to do really is just click on the noise, click on some different channels in your material, and somehow it resets, so next time you render, it usually looks fine. But back to our box of kittens, which, lo and behold, to our great horror, is standing in the middle of a puddle. But because we set this up as a shading network, we will be able to rescue these kittens before any harm can come to them. Instead of having to go through each and every instance of the texture and change that, we can just go into our master texture in the luminance channel, change the random seed quickly, do another render, and just like that, our kittens are saved. Now, saving lives is only one benefit of a shading network. It also speeds up your workflow massively. Hopefully Maxon develops their own proper shading network pretty soon. Hashtag shading network save lives. But until they do that, best of luck with your puddles. Keep your kittens safe and dry, and remember to stay in motion.